So Violet, you'll start the webinar.
Good morning, everyone. We are so happy that
Recognize that each of us can contribute to protecting our environment. Please join me and welcome Anne Matheson.
Thank you, Dr. Dewan. I'm excited to read. I'm very excited to read today to all of you and to share my book, The Forest Man. And it's the true story of a man named Jadab Pang. So without further ado, here's the story. This is The Forest Man, the true story of Jadab Pang. Written by me, Anne Matheson, and illustrated by Kay Whittleson. Jadab Pang loves trees. He loves the sound of the wind rustling through their leaves. He loves the feel of their bark, smooth on some trees, rough and bumpy on others. Raise your hand if you love trees. I think we all do. He loves the birds in their branches and the animals that live in their shade. As a young boy, Jadab and his family lived on the river island of Majuli in the middle of the mighty Brahmaputra River in India. The island was a forest filled with a multitude of animals and surrounded by exotic birds in the sky and fish in the river. Over time, that all changed. In this part of India, monsoons blew in for weeks on end. When this happened, the Brahmaputra River crashed and churned, washing water across the island, leaving a path of destruction. As the water retreated, the forests were washed away, leaving only sand. No trees where the birds could nest, and no shade for the animals. By the time Jadab reached the age of 14, the island was in danger of being slowly washed away. Jadab believed his island could be saved. On a barren sandbar on the coast of the Majuli, he began to plant trees. With only a stick to dig a hole in the sand, Jadab planted 20 bamboo saplings. He had only just begun. Each day from that day forward, Jadab arose long before the sun came up to complete his chores and tend to his cattle. Farm work finished, he would begin his long walk to the Brahmaputra River. There, Jadab would climb into his rowboat to cross the river, and then hop on his bicycle for the ride to his forest, where he would plant and care for his trees. Jadab knew he would need many different trees and plants to make a strong and healthy forest. Here's some of them. A teak tree, devil's tree, custard apple tree, jackfruit tree, elephant grass, banyan tree, starfruit tree, mango tree, and tamarind tree. Jadab didn't just bring plants to his forest, he also brought insects to help the trees pollinate and fertilizer from his cattle to help the trees take root. See that big stinky bag of fertilizer? He was using nature to help rebuild his forest. Day after day, year after year, Jadab continued to walk and then row and then ride and then plant. Walk and then row and then ride and then plant. Walk and then row and then ride and then plant. There were times the rain would thrash down for days on end, leaving Jadab fearing his forest would not survive. Survive it did. As Jadab kept planting his trees and tending his forest, incredible things happened. The young saplings grew. As they grew, they sprouted seeds. The wind blew. As the wind blew, it spread the seeds. The seeds took root. As the seeds took root, the trees grew. The roots of the trees made the land stronger. As the land became stronger, it held on to the rainwater so the grass could grow. Then the birds came back. The birds spread more seeds. The wind blew on, and the trees and the grass continued to grow. Now that there was grass and leaves to eat, the animals returned. Now, as I name these animals, keep an eye on the screen and see if you can watch them popping into the picture. Cows and deer, monkeys and elephants, rabbits, tigers, and even a few rare one-horned rhino. Through all this growth, Jadev continued to plant his trees, as he does to this day. And what has he accomplished? Over 40 years, a man who loves his land started with a handful of small trees. And with the help of the wind and the rain and the insects and the birds, Jadev has built a beautiful forest. Today, people from all over the world come to visit Jadev's forest. He welcomes the visitors and asks that they take the time to plant a tree, to remember his work when they return home, and to plant some trees there too. So that's it. That's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to point out one thing I love that the illustrator did in this book. There's a video that I was watching when I was learning about Jadev, and in it he was wearing this T-shirt that said on the back, "Every day is Earth Day," which I think is a wonderful message. And I love that Kay Woodison, the illustrator, included that in the last picture of Jadev in the book. So I hope you enjoyed it. And now back to
Thank you so much, Anne. That is such an amazing story. And I would like to encourage our teachers and students to think about any questions that they might have for Anne. This is a time when you get to ask your questions. And one of the questions that we've gotten so far, Anne, is people want to know, is Jadaf still alive?
Yes, he is. He's 63 or 64 years old and he's still planting trees. So he's now been planting them for close to 50 years. And his goal is to plant twice to grow the forest. I didn't mention it in the book. It's actually in the book in the back matter. The forest that he has planted is now the size of 1,000 football fields.
That's humongous.
Huge. And his hope is that it will grow to 5,000 acres, I think, by the time he's finished. And he's hoping he can pass on to his sons will take over his work.
That is so cool. I do have a question from a very specific student. Her name is Aria, and she's from Sunnyvale. And she wants to know, Miss Matheson, how many books have you written?
Just this one.
Just the
I
one. Well, it's
was
a really
really
good
inspired
one.
by this story, and I just wanted it to get out there and be shared with
Well,
for sure.
that's one of the questions that was next was what inspired you? What made you so excited to tell this story?
So I read a magazine article about Jadev and I just thought it was incredible. And then I started reading about him. There's lots of video about him online. He's done a lot of interviews. He's quite famous now in India. And the more I learned about him, it's just such a simple message that one person can make a difference. And you make it by doing one step at a time. Jadev didn't start thinking, I'm going to plant a forest the size of 1,000 football fields. He said, I'm going to plant 20 bamboo trees. And that start grew into this. So I just think he's an inspiring person that we should all know about.
Yes, I agree. I think our kiddos agree too. And someone else wants to know, how long did it take you to write this book?
I would say I wrote it and wrote it and wrote it and would read it to people and then pass it on to my editors to look at. So it probably went back and forth and was rewritten about 20 times before it was ready to be published. And that probably took about 6 months, I would think. I didn't keep a track of it, but
So it sounds
roughly.
like obviously it was more than just you. You came up with the idea and wrote the story, but you had someone who drew the pictures and you had someone who helped you with writing the story.
Correct.
Just kind of like teachers help our students when they're learning how to write in the classroom.
Absolutely.
That's
Yep.
super cool. So you have one compliment. Gemma wants you to know that it was such a lovely story that you read, and she wants to thank you very much.
Thank
And
you, Gemma.
also, I have a question about, do you know where this island forest is located?
Yes, it's in the Brahmaputra River, which is in northern India, and it's Majuli Island. Majuli Island is the largest river island in the world. It's actually inhabited, about 1,000 people live on it. But yeah, it's in northern India. I'm hoping one day I can go there and see it.
That would be so cool. So kids, you've got to get your teachers to see if they'll take you on a field trip to India, okay? That's going to be your mission. So Gwendolyn from Sunnyvale, Miss Matheson, would like to know if you like nature.
Yes, I do love nature. I live on a farm and we have a big forest full of trees I can walk through. I absolutely love nature.
I love it. And then we have some questions about your writing process. So Sid wants to know, how do you start?
We start with an idea and inspiration. So I enjoy. I actually publish books, so I don't write all the books that I publish. And we have a lot of books that tell stories about important people, people that have done amazing things. So basically, start with an idea, and then do research, and get your research down on paper, and then try to pick out what are the important elements. What is it you want to try? What is the message you want to try to get across, and then decide what's the clearest way to express that message. Um, and then in publishing, you work with editors who take the author's notes and the author's writing and give it a second opinion, give it a second look, and just try to clean it up and make it a concise, clear story.
I love that. Thank you. So this is kind of along those same lines. Avery from Mountain View would like to know, what was the most challenging part of writing your book? And then how did you overcome that challenging part?
I think the most challenging part was recognizing that I could write a book rather than assigning the book to somebody else to write, to have the confidence to put my story down and work on getting it turned into a book. It was just basically having belief in myself that I could.
So that's really interesting. So I don't know if you remember, but Miss Matheson said that she's a publisher. So normally her job would be to look at other people's writing and help them write their books and get them published. So she's saying that she didn't know if she herself felt confident enough to write her own book, but she did in the end. And what a great book it turned out to be. So that's awesome. Um, we have another question that wants to know, Miss Matheson, what are your favorite kinds of books to read?
Oh, I like everything. I like reading books that are based on history, that tell a story, so historical fiction. I like books where people tell the memoirs of their own life, that people tell their own story. I really enjoy audiobooks. I love listening to books as much as reading books. Um, and
Sounds like you like a lot of good things. And I bet a lot of the kids out there also get to read about other people's lives. And hopefully they're going to get to write their own story about their life too. Um, so now we have some questions about Jadav himself. Do you happen to know what year he started planting these trees?
roughly, so he was around 14 years old, so kind of the mid 70s, like around 1974, 1975. There's actually, when
Okay.
I research it, there's different starting years, but I would say the mid 70s pretty accurately.
So that's what another question, a follow-up question was, how many years has he been doing this? So he's been doing it for a long, long time,
Almost
almost
50
50
years.
years.
Mm.
Okay. Um, so I think too that people are wanting to understand why he did it. And you said it in your story. My understanding, Miss Matheson, was that he did it because he wanted to save his island, because you used a word that I wasn't familiar with. You said that monsoons came to India. Can you tell us what a monsoon is?
Monsoon is it's kind of like a hurricane, a massive rainstorm, and the river that the island's in, the Brahmaputra River, the monsoons were so severe that the river level raised, so that the water washed up over the shores of the island and wiped out the vegetation that was there. So it's partly to do with rising water levels, and when the water receded, there was just the forest had been wiped out, and there was just sand left, so it needed to be reforested, replanted. And I think Jadev was motivated just by an absolute love of the land that he'd grown up in, and he wanted to see it preserved.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that's just amazing, everyone. He was 14 years old and he was told that his island was going to disappear if they didn't do something to save it. And so he just started planting trees. I'm just going to ask really quick to all of those out there who are watching this, how many of you have ever planted a tree? Can you raise your hand? look around the room and see if there are other kids in your class that have also planted a tree. I've never planted a tree. I would love to plant a tree because it makes a home for animals and it's so good for the planet. That's awesome. Okay. So, some of the questions that we have right now too are about you, and they say, if you were going to write another book, Miss Matheson, what would you write about?
That's a great question. I think I would look for another story about somebody inspiring that has accomplished something through just hard work and kind of taken on a challenge. There's a story of a woman named Emily Roebling, who was helped build the Brooklyn Bridge in the late 1800s. And she has a fascinating story again about somebody who was had an insurmountable challenge in front of them, and she just started and built the biggest bridge in the world at the time. So she inspires me. There's basically I'm always looking for inspiring stories about people that have done things that can inspire young people to do it themselves, to try things themselves.
I love it. We are getting so many questions, Miss Matheson. I can't keep up with all of them. One of the questions we had, and this goes back to Jadav actually, is do you have any idea? Ella Joe in San Jose wants to know how many trees you think he maybe planted.
Oh, I have no idea. That's a great question. I know that it's so, as I said in the book, he planted a lot of trees, but then nature kicked in and took the seeds and and planted a whole bunch more. So how many trees are in the forest? I don't know. How many he actually planted is a great question. I'm going to try to find that out myself. But we do know that the forest is the size of 1,000 football fields. So
So I would
how
think
many
that that's
trees
like
is a football
thousands of
field?
trees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Arshawn from Lakewood wants to know how you got all the information from your book, and he wants you or she wants you to know. I'm sorry, Arshawn, I'm not sure if how you got the information, and also to let you know that they really like your book.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I just did research, and most of it I did on the internet. I'm there. I was watched. There's a lot of videos about Jadav. There's a lot of articles about him. He's become quite famous, so there's a ton of information available, and I read all I could.
Very cool. Fairwood Elementary students, shout out, would like to know if you have another book coming out soon.
Not at the moment.
Okay, well, it sounds like you have some fans, Miss Matheson.
Well, there's
Uh,
lots of great books. My company's called Flower Pot Press, and there's a lot of good books there. So you can go take a look there. I didn't write them all. We published
and
them.
this is another good question. Aiden wants to know, how do you find the right ending to a book? Like, how do you finish it? This is such an amazing story, and then you just have to end it. How do you figure that out?
You try a whole bunch and you see which one you just keep trying different endings, and then you see which one kind of like ends it at a place that tells the story but keeps people intrigued to go find out more and to kind of move forward with what you've told them.
Okay. Um, have you ever seen, Miss Matheson, any of the trees that he planted in real life?
I've seen a
Not
banyan.
like his plants, but like the trees here
Yeah,
and yeah.
yeah. I've seen a banyan tree. In real life, I don't think so.
I
I've
know
tried
that would be
jackfruit.
kind of a cool idea, is to
Yeah,
almost go like on a treasure hunt to see if you could find all the
for different
trees
trees. Yeah.
in the book.
So I've eaten mangoes, and he planted mango trees, and I've eaten
Okay.
jackfruit, and he planted jackfruit trees, but the actual trees, no, haven't been in an environment that would have them.
One of our Tracy Elementary class or Trace Elementary wants to know if you ever met Jadav.
No, I haven't, but I'd love to. Maybe one day.
Okay. And then I have a couple people asking, how did you get all those images to move on your book?
Well, I hired animators. We we actually have a YouTube channel where we take a lot of our books and turn them into videos. And it's done by animators who bring stories to life.
Okay. Um, do you know Ebenezer in San Jose wants to know, did Dev save animals as well?
I don't think he directly worked with the animals. He just created the environment that the animals could come back to their habitat. So in that way, he did. He built a habitat for animals that had been lost. But I don't know that he directly harbored the animals.
Okay. And do you know how many children he had? My land wants to know this from Los Altos.
Yeah, another good question. I know he has two sons, but I don't know about daughters. I only know two sons because I've seen a reference to him hoping that his two sons carry on his work.
Okay. And do you know if Jadav, this is Virat from Lakewood, wants to know if he was born in India or on the island? Or maybe my understanding is maybe the island is
Yeah,
inside of India. Is that right?
correct. Yes, the island is in India, and he was born on the island.
Okay. Okay. And so then Hadley from San Jose wants to know, what year did you write this book?
That's a really good question. I think about 2018. I have to look at the copyright page.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but if you look in a book and you open the very first page, the title page, there's always a little C with a circle around it. And that means that's the year that the book was written and printed. So that's a good way to find out when things were written.
Right. So it was 2020.
2020.
I can't remember anything.
Okay. And lots of people want to know, like, what inspired you to want to work with books, Miss Matheson?
Oh, well, funny enough, my father made books. My father was a publisher. So I learned a lot about publishing children's books from him. And then I did all kinds of different jobs as an adult. I had two or three different jobs. And once I became a mother and I was looking at what my career would be as a mother, I decided that publishing books was something I knew and I loved, and I could get started on it slowly and I could um, do it, and it would fit well into my life. So I partnered with my brother and we opened this company together almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago.
So that
And
is really cool. So it's like a family business. Someone asked if you were inspired by siblings or your children, and it sounds like you were inspired by your father, and now you're in this business, you and your brother together. That's
hmm,
awesome. I have a daughter and a son, and I don't think they would ever work together because they both think that they are right all the time. I don't know if any of you out there have a sister or brother that thinks they're right all the time. So I think it's amazing that Miss Matheson works with her brother. That's
I've
great.
just taught my brother that I am right all the time. So
Very good. Okay. Someone wants to know, where do you live, Miss Matheson?
I live in Canada near Toronto.
You don't even live in the United States? That's very
Oh, I'm Canadian.
cool.
My brother lives in the United States in Tennessee. So our company is North American. It covers Canada and the United States.
That is super cool. And I see that one of our classes, when we asked how many of them have planted a tree, about 12 out of 24. Woohoo!
Well done. That's
Keep
awesome.
planting trees. Um, Caitlin would love to know, and I don't know if you would know the answer to this, Miss Matheson. Do you know where Jadev got the seeds from?
So the first bamboo saplings he got, from what I read, he actually went to his local town council when he saw that the island was eroding, and he said, "We have to do something." And he tried to raise awareness and get all the people in the village to do something. And what they did was they gave him 20 bamboo saplings and said, "Here, you go plant these," which he did. And then from there, I think he just collected seeds. Like he'd get people to donate. He lived on a farm, so he'd gather them himself, and it was all bit by bit. I don't think there was one central place he got the seeds from.
I love that. Thank you so much. And this is kind of a great question too. And so, because I have heard this crazy rumor that some people don't like to read, Miss Matheson. And one of our students is asking, why do you like reading?
Mostly, well, for two reasons. I love reading because I find it very entertaining. It's a great way to pass the time, but it's also a great way to learn things and to find out stories and to discover the world and discover the earth. Just there's so much to discover out there. And I also find that reading other people's stories sparks my own imagination. So uh, I've read all my life. I've just always loved books. I hope you all do too.
Me too. I heard someone the other day, Miss Matheson, say that when you read a book, it's like being almost like being in a time machine or being able to teleport because you can
Hmm.
go into all these different places that maybe you wouldn't normally go, like India or Canada or space or under the ocean. And you just get so immersed and you feel like you're in another place. And that's one of the reasons I really love to read.
You go into the future, you can go back in time.
Yes. And you
Yeah.
can find out like what it feels like to be a cat, or you can find out what it feels like to be an astronaut. All the things like that I probably will not ever feel. So it's interesting to get other people's perspective, and I really love that about reading. Um, I see so many questions. A lot of them are ones that you've already answered, but I see this one from Nathan in Mountain View. Would like to know, how did you pick your illustrator for your book?
So that's a great question. So publishers usually have like a large bank of illustrators that they can reach out to for projects. And Kay Whittleson has illustrated a lot of children's books, and I've always admired and loved her work. And she'd never done a book for us before, but because this book was very special to me, we reached out to her and sent her the story and asked if she'd be interested. She actually lives in Britain, in the United Kingdom, and she loved the story too. She really loved the message of it, and she agreed to illustrate it for us. So she's now done a lot of books for us. So it was beginning of a very nice relationship for us.
I love her drawings. I love all the
Yeah.
animals and all the details about like when you were reading, like see when the animals come out. Oh, it was so cool to see them hiding behind trees or up behind the leaves. She did a
Yeah, she has a
beautiful
lot of fun
job.
with it. Yeah, she really did.
Yeah.
Appreciate her.
Well, I am thinking, Miss Anne, that you have answered all of the kids' questions. You've done a marvelous job. I cannot thank you enough for being here. This story makes me feel so inspired. And I hope for those of you who are watching, this was just a 14-year-old boy. I bet a lot of you know 14-year-olds. And we think about superheroes like Superman or the Black Panther or all these cool people who are, but they're real heroes. He saved his whole island and he was just 14 years old. And that just lets you know that really and truly heroes are just people like you and me. So, and there's a lot, anything, you can do things all by yourself. So, one of the things that we're looking at is how to help the planet and how to be good protectors of the planet. And so, planting trees is a good way to do that, planting flowers, doing all kinds of things that you can talk to your teacher and the people at your house about. And so Miss Anne is letting us know that even we can make a difference and we can do things to help protect our planet. So thank you so much for being with us, Miss Matheson. This has been a tremendous honor and joy to have you. And we are excited to see that if you do write this book about the woman who built the Brooklyn Bridge, I think we're all going to rush out and buy it.
Thank you.
So I want to wish all of the classes that were here with us today a very happy Thursday. Thank you so much for listening so carefully and for asking such great questions. And I hope you will continue to read all through the month of March. And we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.